Welcome on in to Hang Time, the Hang Time podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. My main man, John Schumann in New York area, the Tri-Cities area, New Jersey. Listen, NBA free agency is days away, guys. Signing period begins at midnight on July 1st. The trade winds, however, are already blowing hard from L.A. to D.C. The Clippers trade Austin Rivers to the Wizards for Marcin Gortat. And now there are rumors, John, that DeAndre Jordan could be the next man thrown off the ship in Clipperland, maybe to Dallas. And that's not even the main deal. I mean, that's not even what's most important, of course, going on free agency-wise in L.A. with the Lakers all caught up in the Kawhi Leonard drama. The rumor mill, just going crazy as we get ready to dive into the NBA silly season here this summer. Let's start with the Lakers and this talk that they're desperate now all of a sudden to get a deal done in advance of LeBron's decision that has to be made by midnight Friday night. The Lakers and Spurs are reportedly re-engaged in talks about a potential Kawhi Leonard trade. If you're the Spurs, are you looking at this and feeling pressure to get this done? Or if you're the Lakers, are you looking at this and saying, we got to get this done now in order to set up the rest of the summer? When all we've heard from Magic is that, it's a 2-summer process. And all we've heard from the Spurs camp, from R.C. Buford, is that they're going to continue to do whatever it takes to reestablish a good relationship with Kawhi.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the pressure is on the Lakers at this point in the process. I believe the idea that, it's harder to recruit other guys, whoever they may be, with the core that you have now, and it would be easier to recruit another star if you had Kawhi Leonard already in the fold. That makes total sense. The problem with that is that, as we talked about last week, the Spurs control where Kawhi Leonard goes and when Kawhi Leonard goes there. They could feel like, the Lakers probably have the most to offer us, especially if Kawhi's camp sends signals elsewhere that he doesn't want to play for your team beyond next season. But the Spurs don't have to make a trade right now. They don't have to make a trade July 6th. They can, wait till the end of July into August. So, so I don't, maybe the Lakers put some sort of pressure like, okay, we'll give you this, we'll give you this and this. That's we'll give you, A and B as the foundation for our trade. And you can also have C, but after July 6th, C comes off the table or something like that. Like that could be how they sort of try to, put pressure on the Spurs to get a deal done so that, other free agents can, look at the Lakers now as a true destination because they have another star to play with. The interesting thing with LeBron is like he could opt out. Like he could opt in and say, all right, I'm going to stick with Cleveland for one more year and I'll do this again next year. But he could do the same thing by opting out and re-signing it with a 1+1 deal too. Same thing with Paul George. I mean, we already know, we learned, Wednesday night that Paul George is going to opt out or is not going to exercise his player option or decline his player option so he can be a free agent. But that doesn't mean he's leaving Oklahoma City, and it doesn't mean he can't be a free agent again next year. He could do a 1+1 deal with Oklahoma City. So there's lots of things in play, and I don't think LeBron has to see something from the Lakers between now and Friday night in order to opt out.
So what, in your estimation, Shu, is fair value for Kawhi Leonard if you're the Spurs? What do you demand for Kawhi?
That's a great question. I think Brandon Ingram is the young guy I want there most from them. Obviously has incredible tools. He's the versatile sort of forward that every team likes to have. I think Kuzma is interests me as well. And then future picks, as many future picks as I can get. Lonzo Ball is a piece that I like, but you will have a similar piece already in DeJounte Murray, and then, you don't necessarily want to deal with...
Don't say his name.
...the extra stuff that comes along with Lonzo Ball.
Exactly.
And then, like I said, it helps that they have DeJounte Murray already. Like, I don't think there's a desperate need to get a point guard. I think they're similar players, guys that are defense first, athletic, and both need to improve their jump shot.
Right. All right, well, since we're dealing in hypotheticals and rumor mill, and let me put this on a human scale for you, John Schuhmann, and let's just forget about the industry these guys are in, and just think about this in a pure human strain. And we talk about all the time how much money these guys make, and how apparently the general public assumes that because you make a lot of money and you're faced with these sorts of, relocation issues, that it should somehow just be as easy as, well, this is where I want to go, so I go there. But what would it take to uproot you? And I'm putting you in the shoes of a guy like LeBron James right now. You've been living, first of all, you're a husband, you're a father. You've been living in this place that that's basically home for the last 4 years, and really for 11 of the last 15 years. What would it take for you to uproot your family when your oldest kid is on the doorstep of high school? Your wife, for all intents and purposes, for everything we can gather, enjoys living there in her comfort zone around family, nearest where you both grew up. There's going to be no discernible lifestyle change. You're going to be filthy rich if you stay in Cleveland or if you move across the country. What would professional ambition be enough to get you to uproot your family at 33, having already reached the top of your field, and there being no dispute as to who and what you are in your industry? What would it be that could get you to uproot everything to go across the country and chase whatever it is you want to chase?
That's a great question. I don't know where, his priorities lie right now.
No, I'm saying, where would yours lie if you were in a position like that?
Shoot. It's a great question. I think family comes first. He's at a point in his career where what else does he have to prove? Yeah. I know he's I am supposedly chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan or whatever, right. But I don't know if there's a spot right now that says, all right, you can go here and you're going to win the next 3 championships, and that's going to give you 6, right? Is there a spot? I don't know. I don't think there is.
I don't think there's a walk-in situation where he's ready-made to dethrone the Warriors.
Correct. So he's talked about wanting to play with his buddies, Melo and Chris Paul and Dwayne Wade or whatever, that idea has been in there. So sure. Maybe there's a place where he can go and that can be set up for not this year, but next year or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see the basketball situation in Cleveland as great. And we know they're a huge step below the Warriors, but I think we also believe that if they stand pat and if things were to stay the same, that they would not be the favorite in the Eastern Conference next year.
Right.
I think as things stand, the Boston Celtics are the better team for the next 2 or 3 years. And so I don't think there's any easy answer.
Yeah. And I ask you that, Shu, because so often in free agency, we look at this from kind of this multi-tiered perspective of, well, where do you go to chase championships? And, in Paul George's case, if he stays at Oklahoma City for a max deal, it's $40 million more than anybody else could offer. It's always parked in these very specific circumstances. But for a guy like LeBron, to me, and I'm applying his parameters to our lifestyle, which is it's not a very good analogy, of course, but I was thinking about it. I was like, what would it take for me to uproot my family? We've lived here in the same place since 2005. My wife loves it here. I'm just thinking about it. And I was thinking about this last night and this morning in a very personal, context. I was like, what would it take for me to uproot my family and go across the country to do basically the same job with the same challenges? There's somebody out there who's head and shoulders above whatever I got going on. So I'm chasing that. But would I want to pack up and move out of something that's been comfortable for us to chase my own personal, professional ambitions? Would that outweigh the wishes of my wife or my kids wanting to stay where they are and finish high school where they're, and I started thinking about it. I don't know. When LeBron said that family was going to be, a huge part of what his decision was this time, as opposed to what decisions he made previously when he had a family, but he wasn't as established. They weren't as comfortable. They weren't as entrenched. That made sense to me, hearing LeBron say that. I thought, wow, maybe his decision this time around is drastically different because his kids are old enough where they're going to give a crap if they have to pack up and move, if they have to leave the friends, all the things they've grown accustomed to because dad wants to go play for the Lakers. You know what I mean? That decision to me becomes infinitely more difficult because of all of the other people whose lives are impacted by it, and they're of an age that it affects them much more dramatically than it would have if, say, they were little kids that don't know the difference between living in Bath, Ohio, or Beverly Hills. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if we're giving LeBron the credit he deserves for being as thorough and nuanced in his decision-making this time around as he probably will have to be. And I'm just in my own mind, I'm starting to think I'm not going to be shocked at whatever he does, whatever his decision is. I'll be even less shocked if he stays in Cleveland for another year because of that, because of the family parameters that he's dealing with.
And think about it. Him and his family are not the only people that get uprooted when he moves.
Exactly.
Think about his trainer, Mike Mancias.
Yeah.
He's got a family too.
Right.
If LeBron goes to some other team, Mike goes with him, and Mike's family gets uprooted as well. And there's other guys around him that go from team to team with him. Randy. Randy's got a family too. Right? It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. He's a business in himself, and that business has other people other than himself that are involved and who move with him. Mike's with him basically 11 months out of the year at least. Right. LeBron goes to a trip to China, Mike's out there with him. And that's something that I'm sure weighs on his mind. All right, I got to do what's best for me, but also what's best for my family and what's best for the people around me. And I don't think his career I don't think there's anything in his career where he says, well, I really have to do this now. Yeah. He's not there's no desperation at all in his career path to say, I got to do this, while I have the chance. He's done everything he needs to do, really. Yeah.
I'm hoping Cleveland fans don't listen to this and get on this high horse thinking we're suggesting he's going to stay in Cleveland. Because honestly, we don't. I have no idea what he's going to do.
I have no clue.
I have no idea what's going to happen with LeBron James and frankly, anybody else. The only thing we know now is there's a lot of smoke being blown in every direction. And obviously you can get on NBA.com and follow all the latest on free agency before it gets started, during, and after. And that leads me, Shu, to the next part of our discussion here today. David Aldridge has released his under-the-radar free agents list, and it's on NBA.com today. Some very, very interesting names on here. Guys that are critical, to successful situations wherever they go. And you think about some of these guys. I'll start with Trevor Ariza, who was huge, even though he had a brutal Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals. Huge to what the Rockets did this past season, and what they've done. Another guy, Marco Bellinelli, who played a key role for the Philadelphia 76ers. Rudy Gay, who was a cog for the Spurs with Kawhi out all season, played a very pivotal role for them. Isaiah Thomas, who could be a very curious, case this summer in terms of what he ends up doing. So many different guys, where DA lists here basically the 25 guys, the most intriguing 25 free agents that will be available starting Sunday bright and early that people maybe aren't discussing right now. And there are more great names. Aaron Baines is on the list. Michael Beasley, who had a nice season in New York, is one of those guys that pops on DA's list. Avery Bradley, who's, rumored to be in the sights of the Memphis Grizzlies and other teams who are interested in him. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that one season he spent on that big salary with the Lakers. J.J. Redick, another guy who we argued about, and you rightfully said that he would be a valuable piece for the Sixers, even if it was just for this one season. What guys stick out to you, Shu, amongst these under-the-radar free agents, and why?
Well, I'll say this. I was looking. I sort of went through every team yesterday and looked at what they need, and I sort of put players into 4 categories: sort of on the ball guys, guys who handle the ball handlers, sort of off ball perimeter players, versatile bigs, and sort of standard bigs, true bigs. And the longest list I have of teams are the ones that need off the ball perimeter players. So like in Indiana could use a 3. They had Bojan Bogdanovic was their starting 3 last year. Like say, they could use an upgrade there. Portland, could use a 3-man. The Spurs, obviously, if Kawhi Leonard is gone, need somebody. Milwaukee, could use an upgrade from Tony Snell. Oklahoma City, obviously, if Paul George leaves. Miami desperately needs shooting. Minnesota needs shooting, and a replacement on the wing for Jamal Crawford if he leaves. And so that's the biggest list. But then I looked at sort of available free agents, and that's you go from as far as off ball perimeter guys, you go from Ariza and JJ Redick, and then I think there's a big drop off. So I think Ariza is one guy who, we think of as, okay, he's a part of a great team and the Rockets surely want to bring him back. But like this guy could be pretty coveted even at 33 years old. And same thing with Redick, such a huge part of what the Sixers did this year. And, we've talked about this in the past, how important their shooters are to their offense and how Redick, Bellinelli, Ilyasova all are free agents. And so I'm kind of curious as to how that market works out, the sort of the off-ball, guys that, shoot or are perimeter defenders. There was a report, yesterday that Memphis was interested in Avery Bradley. And I was kind of like, Avery Bradley, we talked about him last week and how he's a 6'2" guard. But then I just looked at this list of available free agents, like, well, you know what? Avery Bradley's pretty high on the list of 2/3 guys, with, like I said, a long list of teams that need those guys.
Yeah.
And so that's the market I'm kind of curious about. Like we've talked about, the bigs market is there's a lot of available bigs and not many teams that need them.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about that. Obviously, you have the stars: LeBron, Durant, Paul George, Chris Paul, that are the guys that handle the ball. And almost every team could use somebody like that too. But I'm curious about the sort of the wing players that play off the ball, that shoot, that move, that play defense. I think those are the guys that may, the top couple of guys on that list may be in for or may be pretty well coveted this week.
2 guys that stuck out to me, Shu, in terms of need and, what kind of impact they could have. With the Wizards trading Marcin Gortat, they need a mobile big man who can get up and down the floor, rim protect, and a guy much younger than Gortat. Doesn't that spot seem tailor-made for Nerlens Noel? I mean, a guy who's been searching for kind of a fit. And I'm just saying, if you look at need and availability, man, he makes sense to me on a team like that.
He does
just theoretically.
Theoretically, yes, but he comes with some baggage, obviously. The way things worked out in Philadelphia with him, the way, he has not been a happy camper in each of the last 2 stops. And that tells you something about him. And he turned down a ton of money last year with Dallas to sort of, he bet on himself. And I think he's not going to, that bet didn't turn out too well. So we'll see what he gets. The other one, when you were actually talking about that, the guy on my list that I was thinking about was Derek Favors, but I don't know what kind of money he's going to get. If Utah, how much Utah wants to keep him around. They have his bird rights, so they can pay him more than Washington can. I do think he still has value in Utah, although they would often they would start him and Gobert together and would quickly usually go to a small ball lineup and then sort of stagger their minutes so they didn't play as many minutes together. But I think he still has value as a 4/5 with Utah. but he could be a great fit in Washington as well. Like you said, mobile, big, who can protect the rim.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Derek Favors, and he could be a full-time 5, I think. So he's another guy. And like, obviously, and it's good news for the bigs that Washington made that trade, because that basically opens up adds a team that needs a center. Before that trade, there really wasn't one, because the Clippers could let DeAndre Jordan walk and could have just said, all right, we'll go with Montrezl Harrell. We'll re-sign him, and he's going to be our center because that guy can play.
Yeah.
And so now with Gortat going from Washington to Clippers, I think Washington now obviously becomes a team that needs a center, and that's good for the centers on the market.
Another guy who strikes me as intriguing, Shu, because we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, who's going to be interested, what kind of fit he'd be, Isaiah Thomas. We're talking about a guy who was in the MVP conversation 2 years ago. Just as recently as a season ago, he's in that mix. What is the market for him now, given all he's been through, since the end of that playoff run for the Celtics a year ago?
I have no idea. I think, you ask me, I say he gets a 1-year deal, or one plus a team option. I don't know. Like, not only one because of teams don't know what they're getting, and he needs to prove himself again that he can be, he can be a dynamic ball handler, a guy who gets to the basket, gets to the free throw line. But also, I think, teams don't want to take up space for next summer. I think there's, with every contract, there are obviously players that you're willing to spend long-term money on, but next summer is a big summer for free agency, both team-wise and player-wise. And I think some of these guys, some of these free agents are going to have to settle for 1-year deals, or some of these restricted free agents are going to have to settle for the qualifying offer, just because next year is, teams don't want to put long-term money on the table. We saw it with Redick last year, where the Sixers were willing to pay him $23 million just so it was a 1-year deal, so that they could stay flexible for this summer. And obviously they're still in the market for a star, and because Redick's deal was only 1 year, that they've got that cap space to pursue a max free agent. So Thomas is in a spot where I would be surprised if he got more than 1 year, or a 1 year plus a non-guarantee or something like that.
Yeah. Are there any teams under the radar, Shu, that you're watching? Anybody specific that you're eyeballing in this, kind of beyond just the big names and the big headlines? Is there a team out there under the radar that you're watching?
Well, I think, we look at Houston as potentially sort of trading for LeBron. That's sort of been their storyline. But the reality is they have 3 starters that are free agents: Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, and Clint Capella. And so they have to do some work just to stay intact. And, they should be able to bring all those 3 guys back, but that nothing is guaranteed. And like we just talked about, Ariza should be pretty well coveted because of the need for the type of player that he is around the league. So I think Houston is just a team that is obviously, the second best team in the league, but has some work to do just to keep that together. And obviously they want to upgrade somewhere, but just keeping their starting lineup intact is going to take some work. Luc Mbah a Moute is another guy for them that's a free agent, and he was a critical piece for them this year, just a critical part of their versatility. And so I'm watching them just to see how difficult it is for them just to keep things the way they were.
Mm-hmm. Sekou Smith, is John Schuhmann here on the Hang Time Podcast, kind of breaking down free agency in some different angles. Shu, what? Every year there's another class of players that we kind of forget about when free agency rolls around. It's the guys who are restricted. And there's always quality players, but probably not as many offer sheets to go around that could really turn this period into pure chaos. Is there somebody who you could see livening up this discussion from the restricted free agent class? And what about it, this group this year makes it different maybe than years past?
All right, I'm going to give you a trivia question before we get into the restricted discussion. So restricted free agents are guys that mostly are guys from the 2014 draft, first-round picks who just completed their rookie deal. So they got their options picked up for their third and fourth year.
Right.
There are 4 first-round picks from 2014 who got extensions already, meaning that they're under contract. They're not free agents this year.
Yes.
2 of those are Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid. Right. So my trivia question for you is, who are the other 2 first-round picks from 2014 who already have contract extensions and therefore are not free agents?
Man, I got to think.
Your first hint is that they're both perimeter players on Western Conference teams that did not make the playoffs this year.
Okay. Gary Harris has to be one of them.
Correct. Gary Harris got $74 million over 4 years starting this season. The other one's a little tougher.
That is a good question. Man, what about Shabazz Napier?
Nope.
No, he's going to be in the class. All right, hold on. Let me think, Shu. On Western Conference teams.
This was a bad Western Conference team.
Man, I can't think. Who would it be on a... Man, I don't know.
T.J. Warren.
I forgot about him.
Got $47 million over 4 years starting this coming season.
That's some good faith shown in T.J. Warren by the Suns, by the way.
It's like he's a perimeter player who can't shoot. Yeah. It's kind of fascinating, like that T.J. Warren is is the guy that got the extension and not an Aaron Gordon or a Marcus Smart or something like that.
That wasn't a just blow you away draft class either. I mean, there are a lot of guys in that 2014 draft class. A lot of guys where
the jury's still out. I mean, the jury is still out on Aaron Gordon. The jury's still out on Dante Exum.
Parker,
the jury's still out on Jabari Parker. Yeah. Alfred Payton, I think the jury is like, we're it's an 11-1 thing right now, and they're going around one more time. It's like to that 12th guy. It's like, you still believe in this dude?
Julius Randle is in that group, which I think he's poised to be a quality player in this league. I think he showed us enough to where I'm starting to move him into the thumbs up side.
Right, but his current team isn't exactly ready to open the checkbook for Julius Randle right now. Right. So that makes him a sort of a fascinating case. Yeah. And then Zach LaVine, I
got no worries about Zach LaVine. I know the injury is set him back, but I like LaVine. I think LaVine's a keeper wherever he is, and I think Chicago would be nuts to do anything but have him around for a long time.
I was reading something yesterday, and it's like you realize Chicago has sort of building blocks at every single position now, where they have Chris Dunn, LaVine in the backcourt,
Wendell Carter potentially up front, the rookie.
With Markkanen, who I like a lot, and then their other first round pick is kid Chandler Hutchison, who's a 3. So they conceivably have building blocks at every position, depending on how good the Hutchison kid is. But that's an interesting sort of all right, do they just sort of roll those guys out and let them play 20 minutes together every night this season, or do you
supplement it with some veterans and try and make the playoffs? Because I think they potentially could be a playoff team.
There's a group of teams right now. I think are they patient this summer, or do they become desperate? Phoenix, we've heard, wants to take a real step forward, not just say, all right, we're going to let Ayton and Booker and Josh Jackson just sort of grow together, and we're going to see what we have 2 years from now.
It would be easier to trust them if Phoenix had done anything right the past few
years. Same things with Orlando is in the same you would think like, all right, we just got to be patient, but they've been bad for 6 years now. Like at some point, like you've got to be, and then they have a huge hole. Both those teams have huge holes at point guard. Yeah. And then like the Knicks, like, yeah, you got to wait for Porzingis to come back, but are they willing to like spend some money? Brooklyn, the same sort of thing. Like,
I mean, Brooklyn, the rumor shoot is if it's legit that Brooklyn's getting ready to slap an offer sheet in front of Clint Capella. I mean, there are different ways of restarting or jumpstarting your program. I don't know if I like that idea. If I'm
they're like 0 for 4 on they're 0 for 4 on offer sheets so far. Although they did end up getting Alan Crabb a year later, but
right.
And I think the Capella thing I'm a little dubious of, just because I think Jared Allen, I think they see as their starting center for the next 7 years. I think
right.
From all I've gathered is that they're really high on him. And so I don't know if center shopping is their priority this summer. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. I mean, because you never know how a team wants to reshape the core group of players they have. Like, I think what the Clippers are doing by drafting a couple of 6'6" guards, trading Austin Rivers, to me, they're a fascinating free agent team because I have no idea what kind of players that their brain trust wants to put in place, with the potential young backcourt that's going to have to get minutes, to grow and develop. What kind of players do you put around those guys? You know what I'm saying? It becomes a very, interesting game of shuffleboard all summer for some of these teams, trying to figure out which pieces you want on your board and which ones you want off. And again, we focus so much on LeBron and Paul George and Chris Paul and Kawhi potentially for good reason. You focus on the stars. But I think DA's list of these top 25 underrated free agents is spectacular. It's a great thing to chew on in the days leading up to free agency kicking off, because I have grown weary of all the speculation about these big name guys. It's like, it's going to be what it is when it happens. And I'm getting a little spent, on trying to restructure and reshape that discussion every day.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing we haven't really talked about is, trades, and not just trades like the Gortat Rivers swap, but also the idea of teams trying to get off of certain contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the Hawks would love to get Dennis Schroeder off their books. Kent Bazemore, I guess, obviously, as they were trying to trade him for a shorter contract with that Dallas deal at the draft. Miami and Hassan Whiteside, like what goes on there? Like,
yeah, wouldn't it be awesome if Miami just like a team like that popped up out of nowhere and got in the LeBron mix? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Like, hey, maybe I'm gonna go back to I mean, I would just love for all of this.
Well, the thing you got to remember, not many teams have the means, flexibility to do anything. You know, like. Even, a team like Miami, all their big contracts are long term. So it's not like they can unload a guy who just has one more year on his deal, and then therefore they have now the cap space to sign a guy. Miami, they're in a tough spot, and I'm fascinating to see what happens with Whiteside. Not only can they trade him, but if they don't, do they try to salvage the relationship? Because I think last season, or this past season, he was sort of a placeholder, and I think they were better with Olynyk and Adebayo on the floor, and so, but they couldn't not start Whiteside, because once you sort of bench him, then you've sort of lost him. I think, and so. Do they now just punt on that whole relationship at this, going forward? So we'll see. I'm sort of fascinated by that, and by like some of these other contracts that teams would love to sort of get rid of. Sure. Is there a landing spot for that, and what kind of things do they have to give up, sacrifice in order to sort of free themselves up?
Well, if things heat up the way I think they could potentially going into this weekend, there's different crazy stuff that could go on. Interesting couple of newsy notes to drop in here before we get out of here, and this is all subject to change at any moment. But Mark Stein of the New York Times has an interesting tweet. He says that this doesn't guarantee Kawhi Leonard is going to the Lakers this week, since San Antonio could always trade him elsewhere and or drag this thing out. But league sources are telling Stein of the Spurs that they are, quote, ready to move on from Kawhi Leonard. That could make for a chaotic couple of days for everybody.
Well, the one thing with that I, there's this, theory that the Spurs don't want to create a third super team in the West, knowing that, the Warriors and the Rockets. The Spurs. Well, yeah, the Warriors and the Rockets are already the two best teams in the league. And now if they trade Kawhi Leonard to L.A., he can L.A. can also get another star. And now there's three. But if they trade Kawhi Leonard, like, what is the Spurs' timeline? Do they even care about the next 3 years? Like, or is the next 3 years really their priority? Like, what? Obviously, they're going to be competitive. They're going to be a good team, but they're not necessarily championship hunting for the next few years. So I don't know if I think what they got to do is make the best deal for them for 2-3 years down the line, and in that case, not necessarily worry about what kind of team they're creating for next season and the season after that.
Another newsy tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN. The Spurs are fully engaged in trade talks with several teams on Kawhi Leonard, he says, including the Lakers and Celtics. Boston has long had the assets that the Spurs most covet in a potential Leonard trade. You talk about shifting some balance of power. You put Kawhi Leonard in any capacity on a team with Gordon Hayward, Kawhi, Kyrie, whatever, Al Horford, and whatever remains of those young players, Boston would be a monster in the Eastern Conference. They'd be the head and shoulders favorite in the East, adding Kawhi, even if they had to lose some valuable pieces.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that last week. Them obviously having the best assets. Yeah, the probably could put together the best trade package for San Antonio, but Jason Tatum's probably off the table, and is Jaylen Brown the next Kawhi Leonard with a couple more years of development, right? And I said, selfishly, I want to see them run it back. Because I really, that team really grew on me last playoffs, and I want to see them come back with the team that they have. And like I said, they are the favorite in the Eastern Conference as they stand. They don't need to do anything, and they should be the favorite to reach the finals. But maybe they see a higher ceiling with Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. So much going on. I mean, so much to chew on. The NBA, I don't know what people term an off season, but I think we've jumped that shark in the NBA. We've long since done away with a legitimate offseason. It's year-round basketball. Summer league's around the corner. By the time you get done wiping your mouth from your 4th of July grub, summer league will be cranked up everywhere. So, and this is all after you get a chance to keep up with all of our free agency coverage on NBA TV Saturday night into Sunday morning. Live and rolling. At some point, I think I'm going to make an appearance on one of those shows at some point. But in the meantime, you can find everything you need to know about free agency at NBA.com/free agency. If you haven't already, be sure to check out David Aldridge's Under the Radar free agent list on NBA.com. Very informative stuff. You'd want to familiarize yourself with that list in addition to the names you already know. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts for new episodes of the podcast here every week during the off season. Don't forget to leave a great review. My main man, John Schumann in New Jersey, I tell you to enjoy your break, but you don't have one. You're going to be working, and that's fine. That's a good thing for us. We will be reading. We will be watching. And, we will be paying attention to how the NBA twists and turns through this offseason, man. I will talk to you soon. I'll see you down the road, brother.
All righty.
And we'll see you right here next week on the Hang Time Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Hang Time Podcast, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts for a new episode every Thursday this season. And as always, say Kuna Matata. Matata.